The diplomatic vessel Celestin hung in orbit above Varith Prime, like a silver needle floating in the darkness of space. Inside its massive halls, dozens of alien species had gathered for the annual Unity Summit, a tradition that had lasted for over 300 years. Representatives from the most powerful empires in the galaxy walked through the corridors, their guards and advisors trailing behind them like shadows. Among all these grand delegations, the humans were easy to overlook. They had only been part of the galactic community for 40 years, a mere blink of an eye compared to species that had traveled between stars for millennia. Most aliens considered humanity a curiosity at best, a minor species that had somehow stumbled into space before they were ready. Daniel Cooper stood near the entrance of the human delegation's quarters, his hands folded behind his back. He wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's security forces. No medals, no decorations, nothing that would draw attention. He was 28 years old, average height, with brown hair cut short and eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. If you passed him in a crowd, you would forget his face within minutes. That was exactly how Daniel preferred it. Ambassador Lavra Kim emerged from her quarters, adjusting the collar of her formal jacket. She was a small woman in her 50s, with gray streaks in her black hair, and had a calm confidence that came from decades of diplomatic experience. She glanced at Daniel and offered a slight nod. "The Varanthi delegation just arrived," she said quietly. "Third daughter of the Emperor himself. They're making quite a show of it." Daniel looked toward the main corridor, where a procession of reptilian figures was marching past. The Varanthi were impressive creatures, standing nearly 7 feet tall, with scaled skin that ranged from deep green to almost black. They moved with the confidence of a species that had conquered half a dozen star systems through military strength alone. At the center of the procession walked a younger Varanthi female, her scales a striking shade of emerald with golden patterns that marked her royal blood. Princess Kaela Varanthi, third daughter of Emperor Varanthi XVI, carried herself like she owned every room she entered. Her golden eyes swept across the corridor, judging everyone they touched. Behind her walked Commander Raxon, her personal guard. He was enormous even by Varanthi standards, nearly 8 feet of muscle and armor, with scars crossing his snout that spoke of countless battles survived. The procession slowed as it passed the human delegation. Princess Kiela's eyes found Daniel standing at his post, and her lips curled into something between amusement and contempt. "This is the species that believes it deserves a seat at the summit," she asked loudly, not bothering to lower her voice. "Look at him. So small, so soft. I have seen prey animals on my homeworld with more presence." Several of her guards laughed, a harsh rasping sound. Daniel said nothing. His expression did not change. He simply continued to stand at his post, watching the corridor with the same calm attention he had shown before. Princess Kaela stepped closer, tilting her head as she studied him. "Do you not speak human? Or has fear stolen your voice?" "I speak when there is something worth saying, Your Highness," Daniel replied. His voice was quiet and steady. Kaela blinked, surprised that he had answered at all. Then she laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Such bravery in words. I wonder if your actions would match them when true danger arrives." Ambassador Kim stepped forward, her diplomatic smile firmly in place. "Princess Kaela, it is an honor to meet you. Earth hopes for productive discussions during this summit." Kaela barely glanced at her. "Productive? What could your little world possibly offer to the galaxy? You have no fleet worth mentioning. Your soldiers wear no armor. You bring nothing to this table except curiosity." She waved a clawed hand dismissively. "The galaxy tolerates you because you are new and harmless. Enjoy that tolerance while it lasts." She turned and continued down the corridor, her delegation following. Commander Raxon paused for a moment, his dark eyes studying Daniel with something that might have been curiosity. Then he too moved on. Ambassador Kim let out a slow breath. She is young, and she has never met humans before. Most of them have not, Daniel said. They see what they expect to see. Lavra looked at him with a knowing expression. And what do they expect to see? Pray, Daniel answered simply. The summit officially began that evening with a grand gathering in the main hall. Representatives from 63 species mingled beneath lights that shifted through every color of the visible spectrum. Servers moved through the crowd, carrying food and drinks suited to dozens of different biologies. The air was filled with the sound of translation devices working overtime to bridge the gaps between languages. Daniel stood near the wall, watching the room. He noticed how the different species grouped together, how alliances and tensions showed in body language and positioning. The Varanthi kept to one side, proud and separate. The insectoid Calyx stayed near the exits, always ready to flee. The aquatic Moravi floated in their mobility tanks, observing everything with their many eyes. Princess Kaela was holding court near the center of the room, surrounded by admirers and those seeking favor. She caught Daniel watching and smirked, clearly enjoying what she saw as his discomfort. He simply nodded politely and returned to scanning the room. Later that night, the announcement came. To honor the traditions of Vareth Prime, the summit would include a ceremonial journey to the planet's surface. Representatives from each species would walk together through the ancient jungle to a temple that had stood for 10,000 years. It was meant to symbolize unity and courage. Daniel listened to the announcement without expression. He had read the files on Vareth Prime. He knew what lived in those jungles. Ambassador Kim appeared beside him. You have seen the reports? Yes, the Thornbacks, the Razorwings, a dozen other predators that have killed delegates in the past. She paused. The Varanthi are bringing their best warriors in full combat armor. The Calyx are bringing defensive shields that can stop plasma fire. What are we bringing? Daniel looked at her. Me. Lavra studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I suppose that will have to be enough. Across the room, Princess Kaela was laughing at something one of her admirers had said. She glanced toward the humans again, and her expression made clear what she thought of their chances on the surface. Tomorrow, she would learn why that confidence was misplaced. Tomorrow, the galaxy would get its first real lesson about the species from Earth. But for now, Daniel simply stood at his post and waited. Patience was something humans had learned long ago. It was one of the many things that had kept them alive on a world that had tried to kill them. Every single day, the night passed quietly. The morning would bring the jungle. The shuttle descended through thick clouds, shaking slightly as it pushed through the atmosphere of Vareth Prime. Through the small windows, Daniel could see nothing but gray mist for several minutes. Then, suddenly, the clouds parted and the jungle appeared below. It was green. So much green that it almost hurt to look at. Trees taller than skyscrapers stretched toward the sky. Their branches tangled together to form a canopy so thick that little sunlight reached the ground. Rivers wound through the forest like silver snakes. And here and there, massive creatures moved through clearings, their shapes visible even from this height. The shuttle landed in a clearing that had been prepared centuries ago for exactly this purpose. Stone markers surrounded the landing zone, ancient symbols carved into their surfaces. One by one, the delegations emerged from their shuttles and gathered in the clearing. The Varanthi came first, their warriors spreading out in a defensive formation. They wore full combat armor, black and gold, with weapons that could punch through starship hulls. Commander Raxon stood at the front, his massive frame casting a shadow over those nearby. Princess Kaela walked behind him, her own armor lighter but no less impressive. The Calyx scuttled out next, their insectoid bodies protected by shimmering energy shields that hummed with power. They moved in tight clusters, constantly watching the tree line. Other species followed. The tall, thin Veluxi with their plasma rifles. The stone-like Granari who needed no weapons because their bodies were weapons. The floating Moravi in their armored tanks. And then there were the humans. Daniel stepped out of the shuttle with 4 other security officers. They wore simple tactical uniforms, no armor, no shields. They carried standard sidearms at their hips and nothing else. Compared to the other delegations, they looked almost naked. Princess Kaela saw them and laughed openly. "Is this a joke?" She called out. "You bring 5 soldiers with handguns to a world where the smallest predator can tear through steel." Ambassador Kim stepped forward calmly. "We brought what we need." "You brought offerings," Kaela said. "When the first beast attacks, your people will be the first to die. Perhaps we should walk behind you, let you clear the path for us." Some of the other aliens chuckled nervously. Even they seemed to think the humans were unprepared. Daniel said nothing. He was already studying the tree line, his eyes moving slowly across the shadows between the massive trunks. His nose twitched slightly, catching scents on the humid air. His ears tracked sounds that others could not hear. The subtle rustle of something large moving through the undergrowth far to the left. The ceremonial walk began. A stone path, ancient and worn, led from the clearing into the jungle. It would take 3 hours to reach the temple. 3 hours of walking through one of the most dangerous environments in the known galaxy. The Varanthi took the lead, their armor clanking with each step. The other delegations followed in rough order of their perceived strength, which placed the humans near the back of the procession. Daniel walked at the rear of the human group, watching everything. He noticed how the jungle sounds changed as they moved deeper into the forest. He noticed how certain birds fell silent when something dangerous was near. He noticed the scratches on tree bark where large claws had marked territory. Ambassador Kim walked beside him for a while. "You seem calm," she observed quietly. "Should I not be?" "Most people would be terrified. This jungle has killed hundreds over the centuries." Daniel glanced at the trees around them. Earth had jungles too. We learned how to live in them. An hour into the walk, a young Varanthi warrior began to grow restless. He was barely out of adolescence, eager to prove himself, tired of the slow pace. His name was Torik, and he wanted glory. "This is boring," Torik announced loudly. "Where are these great predators we were warned about? I see only trees and insects." Commander Raxon growled a warning. "Stay on the path, soldier." But Torik was young and foolish. He wanted to impress Princess Kaela, wanted to show that he was braver than the others. He stepped off the stone path and walked toward a cluster of massive ferns, his weapon raised. "Perhaps the beasts have learned to fear the Varanthi," he called back over his shoulder. "Perhaps they hide from true warriors." Daniel saw it before anyone else. A shadow that did not match the trees. A shape that was too still, too patient. His hand moved to his sidearm, but he did not draw. "Not yet. Get back on the path," Daniel said, his voice cutting through the humid air. Rek turned and sneered at him. "The human speaks? Go back to your soft world, little prey. Leave the jungle to those who belong in it." The ferns behind Torik exploded. 12 feet of armored muscle and razor claws burst from the undergrowth. The thornback was everything the reports had described and worse. Its scales were dark gray, almost black, thick enough to stop most weapons. Its head was massive, filled with teeth designed to crush bone. Its 4 eyes burned with predatory intelligence as it focused on the easiest target. Torik screamed and fired his weapon. The plasma bolt hit the thornback's shoulder and left nothing but a scorch mark. The creature did not even slow down. Commander Raxon charged forward, his warriors following. They opened fire with everything they had, creating a storm of energy that would have destroyed a small building. The thornback roared, more in anger than pain, and swept its tail in a wide arc that sent 3 Varanti warriors flying through the air. Panic spread through the delegations. The Kelix activated their shields and huddled together. The Veluxi fired wildly into the trees. Someone was screaming that they needed to run, needed to get to the shuttles. Princess Kaela stood frozen, watching her warriors fall. For the first time in her life, she was seeing something that her people could not simply overpower. The Thornback grabbed Torek and threw him against a tree with casual violence. Then it turned its 4 eyes toward the largest cluster of aliens, the ones making the most noise, the ones who smelled like fear. Commander Raxon positioned himself between the beast and his princess, but his hands were shaking. His weapons had done nothing. His armor would not stop those claws. And then Daniel Cooper stepped forward. He walked past the Varanti warriors. He walked past the panicking aliens. He walked toward the Thornback with his hands empty at his sides. Moving slowly and deliberately, Princess Kaela grabbed his arm. "Are you insane? That thing will kill you in seconds." Daniel looked at her with calm eyes. "Everyone stop firing. Stop moving. Stop making noise. What? Trust me." He gently removed her hand from his arm and continued walking. The jungle fell silent. Even the Thornback paused, watching this strange small creature approach without fear, without weapons, without the stink of panic that all prey produced. Daniel stopped 20 feet from the beast and stood perfectly still. The Thornback studied him with all 4 of its ancient eyes, and Daniel stared back. Unblinking, unmoving, his breathing slow and steady. The jungle held its breath. The galaxy watched through dozens of alien eyes. And nobody understood what was about to happen. Nobody except Daniel. The Thornback was the largest predator on Vareth Prime. For 10,000 years, it had been the undisputed master of this jungle. It had killed warriors from 100 different species. It had torn through armor, shattered shields, and left nothing but bones and legends in its wake. Now it stood facing a creature it had never encountered before. Daniel Cooper did not move. He did not reach for his weapon. He did not step backward or show any sign of the fear that every other creature in this jungle displayed when facing a Thornback. He simply stood there, his feet planted firmly on the ancient stone path, his eyes locked onto the beast's 4 burning orbs. The aliens behind him barely dared to breathe. Commander Raxon had his weapon raised but did not fire, afraid that any sudden action might trigger an attack. Princess Kaela watched with wide golden eyes, her earlier arrogance completely forgotten. Seconds passed. They felt like hours. The Thornback tilted its massive head, studying this strange small creature. It had lived for over 200 years. It had learned to read the body language of countless species. Prey ran, prey froze, prey made themselves small and hoped to be overlooked. This creature did none of those things. Daniel's posture was straight but relaxed. His shoulders were back, his chin slightly raised. His breathing was deep and slow, the breathing of a creature that had no doubt about its place in the world. And his eyes, those strange forward-facing eyes, did not look away. They did not blink. They held the Thornback's gaze with an intensity that spoke of something ancient and dangerous. The beast growled low in its throat, testing this strange creature. Most prey would flinch at that sound. Most prey would break and run. Daniel's expression did not change. If anything, his gaze seemed to harden, to become more focused. There was no aggression in his stance, no challenge, but there was also no submission. He was simply stating a fact with his body, with his eyes, with every controlled breath. I am not prey. The Thornback took a step forward, its claws digging into the soft earth. Daniel did not move. It took another step, close enough now that it could reach him with a single lunge. Still Daniel did not move. Behind him, Princess Kaela made a small sound of fear. One of the Kellics fainted inside its mobility suit. A Veluxy soldier was quietly praying to whatever gods his species believed in. The Thornback lowered its head until its eyes were level with Daniel's. Its breath washed over him, hot and wet, carrying the scent of old blood. Its teeth were inches from his face, and still, Daniel Cooper did not blink. For a long moment, predator and human stared at each other. Something passed between them, something that had no words, something older than language itself. It was a conversation that had been happening on Earth for millions of years. Between humans and lions, between humans and wolves, between humans and every great predator that had once ruled the land. Then the Thornback did something that no alien in that clearing had ever seen before. It lowered its head. Further, it stepped backward. It turned its massive body away from Daniel and walked slowly back toward the undergrowth. At the edge of the ferns, it paused and looked back one more time. Then it disappeared into the jungle, the shadow swallowing it completely. The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel let out a long breath and rolled his shoulders slightly, releasing tension that he had been hiding beneath his calm exterior. Then he turned and walked back toward the delegations as if nothing unusual had happened. Princess. Kiela grabbed his arm before he could pass. What was that? What did you do? That creature has never retreated from anything in recorded history. Daniel looked at her with tired eyes. I did not do anything special, Your Highness. I just showed it what I am. And what are you? Human. Commander Raxon stepped forward, his voice rough with confusion. That makes no sense. Humans are small. Humans are soft. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. How could that beast see you as a threat? Ambassador Kim appeared beside Daniel, a slight smile on her lips. Perhaps I can explain. She looked around at the gathered aliens, all of them staring at her security officer with new eyes. You call our world soft. You think we evolved on some gentle paradise where food fell from trees and nothing tried to eat us. You could not be more wrong. She gestured at Daniel. Earth is what we call a death world. Our planet tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We face predators that would make your Thornback look like a pet. Lions, tigers, bears, wolves, great sharks in our oceans. Massive reptiles that ruled our world before we even existed. Princess Kiela was listening now, really listening for the first time. We did not survive because we were fast, Kim continued. We are not fast. We did not survive because we were strong. We are not strong. We survived because we refused to be prey. We learned to stand our ground. We learned to look predators in the eye and make them understand that killing us would cost them more than we were worth. She nodded toward the jungle where the Thornback had disappeared. That creature has 4 eyes that have evolved to read body language. It has survived for 200 years by knowing which creatures to attack and which to avoid. When it looked at Daniel, it saw millions of years of evolutionary history staring back. It saw a creature that had faced predators like itself countless times and had always survived. It saw that attacking him would not be easy, would not be quick, and might end very badly. Commander Raxon shook his head slowly. One human with no weapons could not possibly harm a Thornback. Daniel looked at him. Maybe not, but I would have tried. And it knew that. It knew that I would fight until I could not fight anymore, that I would hurt it in ways it could not predict, that I would make it remember me. Predators do not like uncertain fights. They prefer easy prey. He paused. There was nothing easy about me. Princess Kiela stared at him for a long moment. The mockery was gone from her eyes. The contempt had been replaced by something else, something that might have been the beginning of respect. Your people, she said slowly. You are all like this? Daniel shrugged. Some more than others. But yes, in our hearts, we are all descended from creatures that refuse to die, that fought back against a world that wanted to kill them, that looked predators in the eye and said no. The walk to the temple resumed, but everything had changed. The Varanthi no longer took the lead. Instead, they fell into step beside the humans, their earlier arrogance replaced by wary curiosity. Princess Kiela walked near Daniel, asking questions about Earth that she had never thought to ask before. And in the jungle around them, the predators kept their distance. Word traveled fast in the wild. Something dangerous was walking through their territory, something that even the Thornback had chosen to avoid. The humans walked on, just as their ancestors had walked across the savannas of Africa millions of years ago. Soft, slow, weak by every measure the galaxy used, and utterly unafraid. The Celestine's observation deck offered a view of the stars that most species found calming. Thousands of lights scattered across the darkness, each one a sun with its own worlds, its own stories. Daniel stood alone at the window, watching the distant glow of Vareth Prime's sun as the diplomatic vessel prepared to leave orbit. The summit had concluded an hour ago, but the real business was happening in whispered conversations throughout the ship. Everyone was talking about what had happened in the jungle. The story had spread faster than light, passed from delegate to delegate, growing slightly with each telling. By the time it reached the far edges of the gathering, Daniel had apparently fought the Thornback with his bare hands and won. The truth was less dramatic, but somehow more impressive to those who understood it. The door behind him opened, and Princess Kiela walked in alone. She had removed her formal armor and wore simple robes that made her look younger, more uncertain. She stood at the entrance for a moment, as if gathering courage, then walked to stand beside him at the window. "I have been asking questions about your species," she said quietly. "I have been reading everything I can find in the Galactic archives." Daniel nodded, but said nothing. "The more I learn, the less I understand." She turned to look at him. "Your world has earthquakes that swallow cities, storms that flatten everything in their path, floods, droughts, ice ages, volcanic eruptions. Your planet actively tries to kill you." "It does," Daniel agreed, "and the creatures on your world." Kiela shook her head slowly. "You mentioned lions and tigers. I looked them up. Massive predators with claws and fangs that could tear through Varanthi armor. And you say your ancestors faced these things without technology? For hundreds of thousands of years. How? How is that possible?" Daniel finally turned to look at her. His expression was thoughtful, not boastful. "We learned. We adapted. We worked together. One human alone is weak. You are right about that. But humans are never truly alone. We form groups, families, tribes. We protect each other. We share knowledge. A human who learns how to make fire teaches every other human he meets. A human who learns how to make a spear shares that knowledge with her children. Over generations, we accumulated advantages." Kiela listened carefully. This was so different from the Varanthi way, where strength was individual, where warriors competed against each other for glory. "There is something else," Daniel continued. "Something that I think your species and most others do not have. We call it persistence hunting. I saw that term in the archives. I did not understand it." Daniel smiled slightly. "Your predators, the ones on most worlds, they are fast. They chase prey in short bursts, catch it quickly, or give up. Prey animals evolve to escape those short bursts. Run fast enough for long enough, and the predator would stop chasing. That makes sense. Energy must be conserved. Humans did not evolve that way. We are not fast. We cannot catch prey in a short chase. But we can do something almost no other creature in the galaxy can do." He paused. "We can run forever." Kiela blinked. "That is an exaggeration. Not much of one. Humans can run for hours without stopping. Our bodies are designed to shed heat efficiently, to keep moving when other creatures would collapse from exhaustion. Our ancestors would pick a prey animal and follow it. Not chase it, just follow. The animal would run away, rest, think it was safe. Then the humans would appear again. The animal would run again, rest again. And the humans would appear again. This would continue for hours, sometimes an entire day. He looked back at the stars. Eventually, the prey animal would fall. Its body would overheat. Its legs would fail. And the humans would finally catch up and finish it. We did not need to be faster. We just needed to never stop. Kiela was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer. That is terrifying. To pray, yes. Imagine being chased by something that never gets tired, never gives up, never stops following you. Imagine running until your heart bursts, only to see those same patient eyes appear over the hill one more time. And this is what the thornback saw when it looked at you. Daniel nodded slowly. In a way, it saw a creature that would not run, that would not submit, that would fight and keep fighting no matter what. Predators prefer easy meals. Creatures that struggle too much are not worth the energy. I made it clear that I would struggle, that any victory at one would be costly. Kiela moved to sit on one of the benches near the window. I have been a fool, she said quietly. I looked at your people and saw only what you lack. Small bodies. No natural armor. No claws or fangs. I thought you were prey that had somehow stumbled into space. Many species make that mistake. But you are not prey. You are predators wearing the skin of prey. She looked up at him. That is why you do not boast. That is why you do not feel the need to prove yourselves. True predators do not need to show their teeth. Daniel sat down across from her. We have learned that lesson many times throughout our history. The loudest voice is rarely the strongest. The ones who survive are the ones who watch, who wait, who strike only when the moment is right. The Varanthi way is different. We believe in displays of power. We wear our strength openly. We want our enemies to fear us before the battle even begins. There is wisdom in that too, Daniel said. Different worlds create different solutions. Neither way is wrong. Kiela studied his face. You truly believe that? After how I treated you, after how my people have treated yours, you still say our way has wisdom. Every species that survived long enough to reach the stars did something right. Your people conquered through strength and discipline. Mine survived through adaptation and persistence. We can learn from each other. A silence fell between them, but it was comfortable now. The tension that had existed since their first meeting had dissolved somewhere in the jungle, replaced by something that might eventually become understanding. I must apologize, Kiela said finally. Not just to you, but to your ambassador, to your entire delegation. I allowed my prejudice to blind me to your worth. Daniel shook his head. Apologies are for equals. We were not equals when we first met. You saw what your experience told you to see. And now? He smiled slightly. Now you see more clearly. That is growth, not failure. Kiela stood and walked back to the window. Tomorrow the summit ends. The delegations will return to their homeworlds. The Unity Summit happens only once each year. She paused. But I find myself wanting to know more about your people. More about Earth. More about how a species of soft, slow, small creatures became something that even thornbacks fear. Perhaps there will be opportunities for that, Daniel said. The galaxy is smaller than it used to be. She turned to look at him. In the final ceremony tomorrow, each delegation pays respect to the others. It is tradition. Empty ritual, mostly. Species bow to each other without meaning it. Say words of unity while planning wars. I am familiar with the concept. I am considering doing something that has not been done in 300 years of these summits. Her golden eyes met his. I am considering showing true respect to another species. Not as ritual, but as genuine acknowledgement of worth. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Your father might not approve. My father sent me here to learn about the galaxy. I believe I have learned something important. She straightened her shoulders. Tomorrow, I will show the galaxy what I have learned about humanity. And perhaps the galaxy will begin to learn as well. She walked toward the door, then paused. Thank you, Daniel Cooper of Earth. Not for saving lives in the jungle, though you did that too. Thank you for teaching me to see past my own blindness. Daniel nodded. Thank you for being willing to learn. She left, and Daniel turned back to the window. The stars still burned in the darkness, unchanged by the small dramas that played out beneath them. But somewhere in that vast expanse, something had shifted. A bridge was being built between two peoples who had seen each other as predator and prey. Tomorrow would bring the ceremony. Tomorrow would bring change. But for now, Daniel simply watched the stars and thought about home. About the blue world that had forged his species in fire and fear and endless struggle. About the long road that had brought humanity from caves to the stars. Thought it was a good road, he decided. Hard, but good. The grand hall of the Celestine had been transformed for the closing ceremony. Banners representing each attending species hung from the ceiling, their colors creating a rainbow of galactic diversity. Platforms had been arranged in a careful pattern, each one placed according to protocols that had been negotiated over centuries. The most powerful species stood at the center, their positions reflecting their influence and military might. The humans stood near the edge of the arrangement, their small platform almost invisible among the grander displays of established empires. Daniel Cooper took his position beside Ambassador Kim, wearing the same simple gray uniform he had worn throughout the summit. He had been asked if he wanted something more formal, something more impressive. He had declined. Clothing did not make the man, his grandfather had once told him. Character did. The ceremony began with the traditional recitations. Each delegation spoke of unity and cooperation, of shared purpose and mutual respect. Most of it was empty words, diplomatic noise that meant nothing and would be forgotten within days. Wars would still be fought. Treaties would still be broken. The galaxy would continue as it always had, but something was different about this ceremony. A tension ran through the room, a sense of anticipation. Word had spread about what Princess Kaela intended to do. Some approved. Many did not. The whispers among the Varanthi delegation suggested that Commander Raxon had argued against it for hours. He had been overruled. When the time came for the formal gestures of respect, the delegations followed the ancient protocols. Species bowed to each other in order of seniority, forming a careful dance of diplomatic acknowledgement. The bows were precise, measured, carrying exactly the right amount of deference and nothing more. The Varanthi were among the last to participate. Their tradition was different from the others. They did not bow. Instead, they offered a warrior salute, a gesture that had meaning stretching back to the earliest days of their civilization. One hand placed over the heart, the head lowered slightly, eyes remaining fixed on the recipient. It was a sign of respect given only to those who had proven themselves worthy in the eyes of Varanthi warriors. In 300 years of Unity summits, the Varanthi had never given this salute to another species. They considered no one their equal. Today would be different. Princess Kaela stepped forward as the Varanthi representative. The hall fell silent, everyone waiting to see what she would do. Protocol said she should address the gathering, speak some words of unity, and return to her position, simple, expected, safe. Instead, She stepped down from the Varanti platform and walked across the floor of the Grand Hall. Her golden eyes were fixed on the human delegation. Each step she took created a deeper silence, a held breath that spread through the entire chamber. She stopped in front of Daniel Cooper. For a moment, she simply looked at him, the security officer who had seemed so unremarkable when they first met. The quiet man who had stood at his post while she mocked his entire species. The human who had faced the most dangerous predator on Vareth Prime and made it walk away. Then Princess Kaela Varanti, third daughter of the Varanti Emperor, placed her hand over her heart and bowed her head. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Ambassador Kin's eyes widened. Daniel himself looked uncomfortable, unsure how to respond to an honor that no human had ever received. But Kaela was not finished. "I stand before you today to correct a mistake," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "When I arrived at this summit, I believed I knew what humanity was. Small, soft, weak. Species that had wandered into space by accident and survived only through the tolerance of greater powers." She raised her head but kept her hand over her heart. "I was wrong." Behind her, Commander Raxon and the other Varanti warriors exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they stepped forward and took positions behind their princes. One by one, they placed their hands over their hearts and bowed their heads toward the human delegation. The murmurs grew louder. This was unprecedented. This was impossible. The Varanti were bowing to humans. "This man," Kaela continued, gesturing toward Daniel, "showed me what humanity truly is. He stood before a creature that has killed warriors from a dozen species, a predator that we train our children to fear. He stood before it with no armor, no weapons, no protection but his own spirit. And it walked away. Not because he was stronger, not because he was faster, because he refused to be prey." She looked around the hall at the gathered delegations. "Your archives speak of humans as newcomers, as a young species still finding its feet among the stars. Your reports describe them as adaptable, curious, perhaps useful as laborers or traders. None of your archives mention what I witnessed in the jungle." Her voice grew stronger. "Humans are predators, not the kind that hunt with claws and fangs, but something far more dangerous. They are predators of will, predators of persistence. Their ancestors survived the death world that would have destroyed most of us. They faced monsters that make our nightmares look gentle. And they did not merely survive. They conquered. They drove their predators to extinction. They spread across every corner of their world, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts." She turned back to Daniel. "I asked him why he did not fight the Thornback, why he chose to stand and stare instead of striking. Do you know what he told me? He said that killing is easy. Showing strength without violence is harder and earns more respect." The hall was completely silent now. "This is wisdom that my people have forgotten, if we ever knew it at all. We measure strength in battle won and enemies crushed. But humans understand something deeper. True strength is not proved through destruction. It is proved through the ability to destroy and the choice not to." She stepped closer to Daniel and spoke directly to him. "On behalf of the Varanti Empire, I acknowledge humanity as equals. Not because you have conquered worlds or built great fleets, but because you have shown what we lost somewhere in our history. You have shown us that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is standing firm when every instinct tells you to run." Daniel finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "We do not seek to be feared, Princess. We only ask to be respected." "You have earned more than respect," Kaela replied. "You have earned admiration." She stepped back and addressed the hall one final time. "Let the record show that on this day, the Varanti Empire formally recognized the species known as humanity as kindred spirits. Not allies, for alliance can be broken, Not equals in power, for power shifts with time, but kindred spirits, those who share the heart of true warriors. The other delegations did not know how to respond. Some remained frozen in shock. Others whispered urgently to their advisors. But slowly, here and there, heads began to nod. Representatives of other species stepped forward and offered their own gestures of acknowledgement. Not as dramatic as the Varanti salute, but meaningful nonetheless. The insectoid calyx clicked their mandibles in a pattern that their translators identified as profound respect. The floating Moravi changed colors in a display that meant recognition of worth. Even the stern Granari, those living stones who rarely acknowledged any species but their own, inclined their massive heads toward the human platform. Ambassador Kim stood tall beside Daniel, her face carefully neutral, but her eyes shining with emotion that she would never show publicly. Decades of diplomatic work had not achieved what one security officer had accomplished in a single moment of courage. The ceremony concluded with new words being spoken, words of genuine respect rather than empty ritual. When the delegations finally departed, the humans were no longer standing at the edge. They had been moved, by common agreement, closer to the center. Daniel returned to his post as the crowds dispersed. He stood near the exit of the Grand Hall, watching the aliens pass by. But now, when they looked at him, they did not see a curiosity or a weakling. They saw something that their civilizations were only beginning to understand. Princess Kaela paused beside him on her way out. "Will you tell stories of this day when you return to Earth?" Daniel shook his head. "I will tell my family that I attended a diplomatic summit and that it was mostly boring. They do not need to know the rest." Kaela laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even her. Humility as well. "Your species continues to surprise me." "Give us time," Daniel said. "The galaxy has known us for only 40 years. We are just getting started." She smiled and continued walking. At the door, she paused and looked back. "Safe travels, Daniel Cooper. And if you ever need anything from the Varanti Empire, you have a friend among us." Then she was gone, her warriors following. And Daniel was alone. He stood there for a while, watching the stars through the observation windows. Somewhere out there, beyond the darkness and the distant suns, Earth waited. A small blue world that had forged something remarkable in fire and blood and endless struggle. Humanity had taken another step among the stars, and the galaxy was beginning to understand what that meant. The apex predators of the universe had bowed to the soft, small, slow creatures from the death world called Earth, because those creatures had never been prey. They had never been prey at all.